Madam Clerk, if you would go ahead and take the roll call.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
You almost did it, didn't you?
I did, almost did it. Took me 3 months, but Commissioners Antor. Bolter. Vice Chair Breeby. Commissioners Bulkowski.
Present.
Burl.
Here.
Green.
Here.
Hennessy. Jones.
Here.
Coleman.
Here.
LeGrand.
Here.
McLeod.
Here.
Morgan.
Here.
Ponstein.
Here.
Skaggs.
Here.
Sparks. Teal.
Here.
Womack.
Here.
Wooden.
Here.
Chairstack.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 19 members present and 0 absent. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I will now call on Vice Chair Breedy for the invocation.
Good morning, everyone. So I have a prayer, and then will you bow your heads with me? Dear Lord, thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you for the sunshine that's coming through our windows and the signs of spring that we have been seeing, the signs of renewal and growth. Please be with us today as we go through our agenda and discuss and help us to have fruitful conversations and communication with each other. We're so grateful that we get to lead our county like this, and please be with other leaders throughout the country and the world who are going through some difficult times, and be with our friends in the Ukraine and Russia and help them come to a peaceful end of the war that's going on there. Thank you, Lord, for this opportunity, and please bless our conversations. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll now move to a special order of business, and we have with us our folks from the airport, Tori Richardson, who's bringing a nefarious character with him.
Good morning, Commissioners.
He's on work release.
Is he?
I am, not him. So we do have a report that Tori will give you in a minute. I just wanted to run through quickly the makeup of our board and the committees that they serve on. So as you can see by the slide on the wall, Floyd Wilson is our vice chair. He also serves as chair of our operations and marketing committee. Serving along with him are Commissioner Morgan and Doug Small. Then we have our finance committee, which is chaired by Birgit Close, and serving with her are Commissioner Breeby and Peter Bukema. So those committees each meet once a month, and our whole board meets once a month. So that's sort of the makeup of our board and how we operate. With that, Tori.
And for our folks who are watching online, that was our former board chair, Dan Korndijk, and the board chair of the Airport Authority.
Thank you, Dan, and good morning, everyone. Tori Richardson, President and CEO of the Gerald R. Ford International Airport Authority. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to give you a quick update today. I'm going to go through the slides fairly quick. Hopefully that sparks some questions for you as we go along, and certainly happy to answer any of those questions as we move.
So I told Tori 10 minutes, keep it efficient. And,
I have the button here.
We'll be fast. So this is our leadership team. Dan explained the makeup of our board. This is a leadership team. Of course, we've been rebuilding the team since COVID. Happy to announce a new Chief Financial Officer. She'll be starting with us next month, Maria Kim. And then we're still in the process of recruiting for our Commercial Development Director. But those are the people that oversee all the major functions of the airport organization. What do we do? Our board wants us to be creative, innovative, award-winning, and fun. So here's an example of some of the awards that we received in the last year. Best and Brightest, both regional and national, the Airport of the Year under the Michigan Department of Transportation. Also received lots of accolades and awards for the way we're handling our guest experience and customer service. Lots of our construction projects receive awards, our marketing program, as well as our financial reporting. So very pleased with the work that our people do. In terms of what we are, I think most of you know, 3,200 acres of land out there. Some of it for development, we'll touch on that in a little bit. In 2019, it was our best year ever, serving 3.4 million passengers. Happy to report that we just finished last year at 82% of that, so doing very well on the recovery. And our emphasis is generating economic impact for the region. So We have a goal of getting to $10 billion, and we'll talk a little bit about how we think we can get there, but as of right now, it's $3.2 billion, so by the end of the decade, we want to just about triple that number. So here are some of the names and logos that you would recognize of those that are doing business out there. Again, over 100 companies, 2,000 direct jobs at the airport. This is a sample of where those folks are working. In terms of where do our people come from, this is our catchment area, so we look at the area around the airport that primarily is serving the passengers by where you purchase your ticket, and we're retaining about 80% of the folks in this catchment area utilizing the Ford Airport for their travel needs. That other roughly 20% we call leakage. They're going to other places, primarily Detroit and Chicago, and primarily for international traffic. So something that we're working on to capture some of that international business. In terms of the recovery, we're doing very well. So where these people are coming from and the number of folks that are coming back has been great. We've had several months where our recovery was at 90%. Again, we ended the year at 82%. If you look at this forecast, this was done during the pandemic. We did a low, medium, and high forecast for the recovery. And if you look there towards the right-hand side, third quarter, actually starting in second quarter into third quarter, very strong. We anticipated ending the year stronger than we did, but unfortunately with the Omicron variant, several system issues with the airlines, and then the issues with COVID and crews not being able to show up either with COVID or quarantining because of COVID, lots of cancellations. So fourth quarter didn't end quite as well as we had hoped, but nonetheless still very, very well and above our even high growth or high recovery forecast. In terms of our route map, we're doing very well, back to 33 nonstop destinations served. So pre-pandemic, that was 36, only 3 routes that have not yet returned. And some of that is seasonal, so they come and go, but 1,600 flights roughly in a month. We're doing very well. Looking at this as our scorecard, you can see in the upper left, Allegiant is the largest carrier in terms of the number of cities served, but Delta remains the #1 carrier in terms of the seats in the market, the number of passengers that they're pushing through our facility. So in the upper right, you can see the market share, Delta at 27%, Allegiant at 26%, then followed by American, United, Southwest, and Frontier. The cities in the center are the top 20 destinations. You can see all, with the exception of 2 of the darker fonts, Seattle and Portland, all back to nonstop direct service. So there's 2 more that we need to pick up to catch the top 20, and we're well on our way of doing that. And then the lower right is another metric that the board and the staff are keen on, and that is what is the average airfare out of Grand Rapids, and what does that look like relative to the national numbers? You can see we're right at $299, which is the average airfare. This is provided by the Department of Transportation. So we like to see that number right at that or even slightly higher. That means that the airfare is competitive and that the airlines are healthy serving our market. Mentioned that our board always pushes us to be creative and innovative, so we're very happy to just in the last month launch the Ford Launchpad for Innovative Technologies and Entrepreneurship, or FLIGHT. What we're doing with this one is partnering with 3 different companies, doing 3 different types of platform work, and so we're really that test bed for designs, concepts, testing. In the upper left here, we've got remote autonomous drones with Sunflower Labs, really looking at how can you do maybe perimeter security, incident management, things like that using drones and doing that in an airport environment. So we're working with them. Arugo on the right there is basically a digital twin is what they call that. They're designing an airport just like the Ford Airport, modeling the traffic flow so we can look at what are the most efficient traffic patterns for baggage carts, aircraft operations, things like that, so that you can test it in a computer or simulation rather than trying to do that out on the ramp. So looking for efficiency and safety improvements out of projects like that. And then we're really happy this last week, Wheel, the autonomous mobility device, was deployed. So that's after the checkpoint right now. You can go out to the checkpoint and grab one of these autonomous devices, which is essentially electric wheelchair with an iPad on it. You can tell it which gate you need to go. It'll take you right there, so you don't have to have somebody pushing you or trying to help navigate. It'll automatically do that for you. And again, we like to be the test bed for some of that technology and hope that that can improve accessibility and be deployed at other airports in the future as well. Some of the stuff that we're working on, as I mentioned, we want to be a generator of $10 billion of economic impact. We have about 900 acres that are ready to be developed. That's one of the ways that we'll do that, by providing a place for others to do business. And these will all be developed compatible with the airport operations as well as the community surrounding them. Looking internally, what do we do in terms of projects to help contribute? We're building an airport operations center, so on the left-hand side is phase one. That will house our communications, our incident command, and our operations folks. That project has started and should wrap up later this year. The second phase is our aircraft rescue firefighting facility, which will be adjoining that building and is consistent with our future master planning efforts. Here's just a quick photo of what the operations center is looking like as of last month. So the building is enclosed, and again, we're on track for a mid-year completion of that project. Very pleased with Project Elevate, or the program Elevate. This is really going to be transformational, largest expansion that the airport has ever undertaken, and especially in such a short period of time, which is desperately needed. But you can see $407 million of investment over the next few years. Some of the elements of Project Elevate are the Concourse A expansion, which we've already kicked off, the relocation of our air traffic control tower, the Federal Inspection Station, which we just opened the first phase of that last year, a check baggage inspection system, the consolidated rental car facility, and a north parking garage once we're able to get the tower relocated. So some of this stuff has to, fall in place in terms of sequencing. But if you look at Concourse A, we broke ground late last year. That is going to provide 8 additional gates. We already have airlines asking for more gate space than what we'll be able to provide even with the expansion of this facility. And there's some renderings of what that will look like inside. This is giving you an indication of just how big that facility will be when it's done. So the red boxed area is the current Concourse A. The darker shaded border is where that footprint will be once it's all done. So almost triple the size. Nice modern lighting, lounge, new concessions program, et cetera. And then we've mentioned the air traffic control tower several times. I think all of you are very familiar with that issue, but being on top of the terminal and as short as it is, it's hindering our opportunity for development. So last year, we just completed the first ever in the U.S. virtual remote sighting study with the FAA. It's about 70 different folks across the country online for countless hours using virtual reality goggles, building a mock-up in our conference room since nobody was meeting in person. They built it out of styrofoam. We're using these goggles and really acting as though they were controlling traffic out in the airfield, and then decided where the exact location needed to be for the tower, how big the cab needed to be, how tall, and what the equipment needs to look like. So that should wrap up with approval out of DC and headquarters, we're hoping in June. And that will push that tower project forward further than we've ever seen it in the last 30 years. And then the Federal Inspection Station, or FIS, that's the first phase. We added additional curb front. If you look inside the building, that's additional baggage claim, additional square footage for reclaiming baggage, as well as additional restrooms. Those were all identified as deficiencies in our master plan that our current terminal did not have, so we're happy to check those items off. As we build from the left to the right into phase 2 and phase 3, that second phase 2 and phase 3 will be the portion that allows us to actually start the processing of international passengers, and you can see it provides additional curb front and then moves us right down to where the Conrack facility will go, or consolidated rental car facility on the far right, which is a parking lot today. That'll be a 5-story facility housing all of the rental car operations. So the guests to come in and grab the car, as well as behind the scenes, the folks that clean, wash, vacuum, refuel, service the vehicle, and where you would return the vehicle when it comes back, all into one environment that's protected and great for the guest experience. So I wouldn't be able to tell you about all these cool projects if I didn't also share how we pay for some of this stuff. So on a financial update real quick, and I won't go through in detail on all the numbers here, but total revenue on the left-hand side, you can see with the green, that's our actual, the red was the budget, outpacing our budget, which is where we want to be. On the right-hand side, our aeronautical versus non-aeronautical revenue. Aeronautical primarily being from the airlines, non-aeronautical being from multiple other sources, the primary being parking. We like to see that non-aeronautical number be as high as we can, because that means we're then passing less of the cost on to the airlines, which provides better service and better rates. So doing very well with regard to our revenue in that graph. Parking gross revenues, as I mentioned, our number one revenue source, outpacing our budget, which is great. Unfortunately, we're closing the garage in the last 2 to 3 weeks, several days a week again, so we are at capacity, which again goes back to the tower needing to be moved and another garage facility located there. But then on the right-hand side, you can see our rental car operations have also increased in the last 6 to 9 months. A little bit light the prior 6 to 9, but certainly came back pretty strong for the last season, and hope that will continue for this season as well. On the bottom, not as good, transportation network companies, or the Ubers and Lyft. performing at or below budget, and then our concessions, food and beverage and retail. Again, we don't have all the facilities open yet. They're tracking the budget, but just not overwhelming in terms of the performance yet. If we look at our cost per enplaned passenger, a key metric for the airlines, you can see that we're doing better than budget. We like to see that number close to $10. Of course, during the pandemic, that number went out of control, but certainly back to where we need to be, and that's a key focus for the airlines. It's telling them what it is for cost of business to do business at our airport. And then down at the bottom, something that you are all very familiar with and probably keenly aware of is the debt coverage. So we need to make sure that we are at or better than the debt coverage requirements in our covenants, and you can see that we are performing better than that. That leads us right up to the roll-up of how are we doing? Cash on hand, we're doing very well. Obviously, in the pandemic, that was a really tough time. We got down to about 67 days cash on hand. Our board late last year set a policy of having 180 days cash on hand, and you can see we've been able to maintain that and sustain it. That should be no problem for us to do going forward. That cash on hand, Moody's average at the top is the average of other airports, closer to 3 years. But again, we're in a mode of heavy development, infrastructure investment, so we're spending that money fairly quick. Spending that money, that means the graph on the right needs to show that our operating margin is there, right? So we need revenues exceeding expenditures because everything that goes above the requirement to meet expenditures is getting reinvested right back into our capital program. That's what that margin does. All of that money goes right into the capital developments that we're paying for on an annual basis. So what does that look like for our current debt obligations? You can see here, first one coming off in 2025, but about $200 million of outstanding debt, the furthest being the Concourse A expansion, which just kicked off. In fact, we won't even see payments on that for another year, but that you can see takes us out to 2051. Well, that was a lot of information in a short time, but happy to take any questions or comments that you may have.
Thank you. Yeah, very well done. Thank you, Tori. Always interested in hearing about this essential asset. Questions or comments from commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the great presentation this morning. I'm curious about the vision for the Federal Inspection Station for international travel. Does international mean Cancun or Amsterdam?
Great question. Right now, it's Cancun. So what we have been looking at, and this is something that's been driven by our board for many years, is we want to be able to provide a place that our customers, the guests in West Michigan, want to come and go to, which is primarily those sun and fun destinations. So initially, it will be more of the seasonal charter operations, 1-2 days a week, probably Mexican locations in terms of, cities in Mexico that are fairly easy for domestic airlines to get down there and get back to operate. So that'll be the primary focus. We're very pleased that Allegiant has entered into or is in the process of entering into an agreement with Viva Aeromexico, which would be basically connecting cities in Mexico with cities in the U.S. with a joint venture between those two airlines. And they have identified Grand Rapids as being served to Cancun, and that was as early as 2025. So probably not going to happen that fast in terms of, all the approvals that have to go forward through the governmental process. But it's good to see that we're in sort of that first wave of international deployment, which is why we need to be able to keep moving with the FIS.
Commissioner Bulkowski.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tori. Thank you, Dan. Following up on that international question, though, what would it take, or what to get a flight to Frankfurt or Amsterdam or towards the east? That what are those metrics, and how far are we away from that?
So I don't have the specific metrics, but it's the number of passengers that would be flying back and forth. And you can look at both direct, like you're getting off in Amsterdam, or connecting through Amsterdam. We simply don't have the market size, the quantity to be able to justify that yet. So our first foray into international will be the seasonal charters, getting people familiar with that. Really, it would be the business-to-business connection. So where else in the world do we have the largest business connection from West Michigan, and then do we have enough to justify the ridership for the airlines between there? Right now, international travel is so depressed in terms of what's happened that it'll be many, many years before we see those numbers come back. So that type of business-to-business market is probably several years out. The international, sun and fun destination charter stuff is more immediate.
Thank you. Commissioner Green.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dan and Tori, for being here. Two very brief questions. With the addition of the Conrack, I assume that we will capture or recapture that existing space that's being utilized by the rental facilities now, and we'll use that for parking?
Absolutely, Commissioner.
Okay.
So the intent is we get about 1,000 spaces out of that parking garage, which really buys us time, right? So we get
Right.
1,000 more spaces of covered parking, joining the terminal building by getting the rental cars out and operating in their own facility, which they want to do. That does buy us a little bit of time, but ultimately we do need that north garage just to the north of the existing garage, and we can't do
Right.
that until we get the tower relocated. So it's buying us some time and providing some guest service in the meantime.
Great, thank you. And then the other brief question I had, with the rideshare revenue, and my colleagues who are on this board and have served on the airport board in the past might roll their eyes, but we capture a piece of revenue from rides that come to the airport?
We do. We get a drop-off and a pickup fee. Unfortunately, there has not been a lot of business
Right.
travel that's driving that, so when that, graph shows that they're down there, below budget, that's an example of what's
Sure.
happening with the business market for them right now.
Okay, great, thank you.
Commissioner LeGrand?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Green just asked one of my questions. First of all, I was really interested to see all the different metrics you're using, and to me, one of the most interesting ones was the cash on hand, and I'm really glad to see the rate at which you're reinvesting, because I really believe we're still playing catch-up on the service that the airport is providing and what the area with its growth really needs. So I'm really happy to see that you're investing aggressively. I think that's really smart. But on the TNC question, the question of how people get to the airport, now I think maybe you just answered this when you're saying business travel is still too depressed to support a whole lot of travel, but are we at this stage? I'm always, how do I get to the airport? Who do I hit up for a ride if I don't want to park my car there for a long time? How close are we to having a more reliable public transportation option? Is that something that you get involved with from your end, or do you really just see the ride share as the next stage?
So we do get involved in the public transportation piece. I will say, while the TNC revenues are down, we went for a long time where there were 0 cabs available and 0 Uber or Lyft operators available. They are back now, so you can get those service providers if you need them or want them. We're just not seeing the level of activity for those back to where they were. A lot of people, again, with the garage closing, a lot of people are taking their car out there, parking it. Most of those folks are, going for sun and fun destinations, traveling for the week, maybe doing remote work because they still can, and doing it from a sunny place down south as opposed to up here. So that's the change that we've seen. We are starting to get more and more of the business traveler back, and we're seeing that anecdotally in the terminal with, people with logoed shirts and their, one carry-on bag that you can tell that's the business person versus the, the family traveling. So we'll see those numbers come up, but we do work with the public transportation, and that's available. And we're also, again, with cabs and with the transportation network companies, seeing more of their vehicles available out there.
What is the fee for the ride share, like an Uber or a Lyft? Like how much does the airport take?
So we get a $3 pickup and drop off. So we'll get it, if somebody's dropped off, it's $3. If somebody's picked up, it's $3.
Okay. Interesting, thank you.
That's pretty low compared to average, but we think it's right for this market.
Thanks.
Commissioner Ponstein?
Thank you, Chair Stack. So, Tori, thanks for being here today. I appreciate your remain focus on airfares. I know when I was first elected, what the airfare and where we ranked is far from where we are today. So I really appreciate that. I've just started to actually fly again. The airport looks great. You did mention guest experiences, the things that we have there for them. My question is kind of on a different area of that guest experience, and I would hope that airlines, remember that the person flying is probably one of the most important things. And we're partners in a lot of things, and every time you've come here, you've talked about the working partnership with the airlines, with the airports, and none of them could exist without being that type of partnership. However, this past winter, something happened, not just at our airport, it happens at a lot of them, and it's becoming more and more frequent as airports are getting more crowded, they don't have the space, is that passengers are stuck on a tarmac from anywhere from an hour, 2 hours, to even the extremes of that. And I know it's not directly your fault, but in the end, you know, that's who's using the airport. And it finds it, you know, for me to, you know, hard to believe that the airlines, when one airline is in trouble with that, doesn't have a gate, employees didn't show up, no way to get the people off the plane, that there isn't a system in place, not just at our airport, but any airport, where the first priority is to get that plane in so those people can get off, whether it's at their gate, a competitor's gate, or somewhere else on the airport where they can at least maybe, you know, in the old days, you know, when I think it was Delta had the commuter flight, you know, ASA out of Atlanta, is where you would disembark down, you know, just a stairway. Is there any talk in the airport industry on how this can be rectified? Because it makes bad news every time it comes up.
Yeah, it's a great question, and you're right, it's not just one that's isolated to here, it happens everywhere. There are airlines that are willing to talk and work with each other on occasion. It's a very complicated situation because they all have to be specifically trained and maintain training for that type of airplane, so it's not a matter of just taking somebody and going to work another airplane. They have to be signed off to do that, especially for another airline. But we can work with them about having backup plans in place to do that. So it does happen on occasion where we might get an international plane in here diverting because they can't get into Chicago, and we've got to be able to ground handle that. So we work with the airline partners to find out who can actually work that airplane based on the training and experience that they have. So it's something that we can continue to work on. The aviation industry has got some sort of certification process to try to help with that, but it really gets down into challenges within the individual airlines and what they will allow somebody to do in terms of operating or marshaling their airplane and servicing it with the doors and stuff like that, just because of insurance and liability, and those things unfortunately complicated. But there are ways to work together, and we certainly promote that. And the situation that we had here that happened this last winter was unfortunate. We did have one that was almost 3 hours. Out of the 540 or whatever flights that operated that weekend, it was 2 flights that had those issues, and it was a situation where the airline had several people call off work and were unable to be there. So they're normally our staff to have 3 airplanes on the ground at the same time, but due to weather and cancellations, they had 6, and they only had the staff to do 3.
So, yeah, thank you for the response, and thank you to your response to my email to you promptly, but you did mention insurance, and maybe you can talk to the guy next to you about that problem.
He probably does not want to get around aviation insurance. Thank you.
Exactly. All right, Commissioner Womack.
Yes, thank you. Very enthralled to hear about the budgeting, the expansion, and the revenue metrics, and keep up the good work, and thank you for those updates. Historically, the firefighting foam at airports had exposed airports to PFAS, so I want to know where we're standing at on our environmental issues and a few updates environmentally at the airport. Yeah. Yeah. I know there's been more testing around airports, and I'm just grateful for some of the things that you did that the airport spearheaded when it came to PFAS in the Kentwood areas.
Yeah, so we continue, it's a great question. We continue to work on it. This is something that will challenge us, not just the airports, but us as the human population for decades to come, because it's everywhere. It's in the carpeting, it's in materials that we use every day, that gets into our water systems and into our soils. In terms of what we're doing, we've captured what we are, have put into the ground. Unfortunately, that's historical impacts. So
Yes.
For decades, we were all using this, AFFF, or the foam for firefighting that contained this required chemical. Nobody knew of its hazards or its existence. I was an aircraft rescue firefighter. I've handled it many times. It just looked like soap and bubbles you play with when you're a kid. So nobody knew of the harm that it was going to cause or the issue that it was going to cause later. But we have controlled everything that we can in terms of no longer needing to discharge that for training, no longer needing to discharge that for certification, which we were all required to do up until last year. The only time it would be discharged now is in an aircraft emergency, which we have to do. So we're still required by the state and by the Federal Aviation Administration to have AFFF on our vehicles, in our systems that do contain that mil spec, which includes PFAS. We have minimized every opportunity that could get into the soils in the water going forward. And now we know that it's there. If we do have to discharge it for an emergency, we know we've got a hazardous area that we need to clean up, and we would do that. Now it's just a matter of how do you deal with the historical impacts, the stuff that's been in the ground for decades, and where that's going and how you clean that up. So far, they don't know how to clean it up. It's something that's still being researched and tested at the national level. There is no replacement for that foam yet, so their military as well as the FAA are still working. They've tested like 400 different combinations of 135 chemicals, and they can't come up with a suitable replacement. So in other words, it would be less effective in a firefighting situation. So they're still working on that, but we need a replacement foam. And unfortunately, we're going to need a lot of money for cleanup. So as the state goes and finds new places where there is PFAS contamination, that's great. Unfortunately, there's no funding mechanism to help clean up those areas. And in some cases, like airports, who historically had to use this, you know, that's one place to go and look to see where it's at. Unfortunately, the revenue is not there from the federal requiring us to do that, and no funds yet available to help clean it up, because again, they don't know how to clean it up yet. They aren't even sure how this stuff travels. Some say it travels by air, some, you know, traveling in the ground. But we're doing everything that we can to be as environmentally responsible for it. And we're assisting both with the Cascade, City of Grand Rapids, and with Eagle in partnering to come up with funding streams, at least for now, to get municipal water in areas that are impacted and are exceeding those MCLs or those minimum limits.
Thank you very much, and you answered my second question, which was going to be what type of revenue is coming in from state or federal, you know, just so you can have more advocates trying to make sure we have money coming in for some of these environmental should be mandates to help get cleaned up. But without the revenue, I know that can be hard. But thank you for being proactive on everything you're doing and everything you're doing to protect our constituents in the future. Last question is, how is Floyd Wilson doing? Our community's been praying for him, so is he all right? How's Floyd doing? Floyd Wilson.
So he is now he's moved, he had his choice for Mary Free Bed or for Blodgett Spectrum. He went to Blodgett Spectrum for rehab, so he's in rehab right now. So
Okay.
still needing prayers.
Yeah. Well, let him know that our community's been praying for him. I'm very thankful that he came to a few events that I had this last year to engage the community, and everybody's praying for him. So thank you to his brothers and sisters on the board.
Thank you. Commissioner Wooden?
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Mr. Richardson, Chair Korndike. I had two quick questions. One, I will admit, in your time-efficient remarks, you may have said this and I just didn't hear it. Could you speak a little bit more about the airport's role in commercial freight and how Project Elevate and some of the expansions that you're planning may impact that, or if it's exclusively residential?
So Project Elevate is more focused on the passenger transportation side. Cargo, we're doing well. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of additional development in West Michigan around the needs for additional cargo. So working with FedEx and UPS, they're fairly content with the services and the facilities that they have, but we are doing a cargo study, just looking at who is shipping, where are they shipping, are there opportunities to, you know, improve the efficiency in those shipping, and so we're having those conversations. Fortunately, it's on the other side of the airport, which keeps it away from the passenger activity, and they have plenty of space, and we've got plenty of room for growth and development over there. That's where the air traffic control tower will be relocated once that comes online. But we've got ample facility over there, and actually we're working with Cascade. They're gonna have a temporary fire station over in one of those facilities while they build their new one. So making use of the space. But yeah, that's a good question. We've seen cargo traffic in the last year go up, lots of it because of all the additional shipping. It's kind of flattened back out again, and we'll see what happens with supply chain shortages, which typically, if you start to see, you know, slowing down of trucking, rail, and ship containers, then people start flying it by air. So then we see that level pick back up for us on our side.
Thank you.
Yep.
I appreciate it. And then my second question, given the ongoing need for funding for the tower, I believe when the American Rescue Plan passed earlier last year, I saw there were provisions for specifically for airports to apply for funds. Has that been looked at, or is that a possible avenue, or is it not lined up with this goal?
So there's a lot of different lines of eligibility, what you can use federal funding for. So for us, under ARPA and CRISA and COVID relief, they were all focused on operational expenses, cleaning, disinfecting, personnel costs, things basically to keep us operating while there was no revenue, because they needed us to be able to fly PPE, the vaccines in and out, et cetera. The new bipartisan infrastructure law does have funding that will be available for airports to use and the FAA to use to upgrade aging infrastructure, which includes towers, which is what we'll be focusing and pressuring the FAA to use those funds for tower at the Ford International Airport. So the opportunity is there. We'll still have to push for it. And again, we're kind of going through this long process. The siting study took 2 years. We're now finalizing the cost estimate, and it'll move into design and then allocation of funding. That's where we're at right now. We're hoping in June we'll get the final sign-off to move into that next phase. And
Fantastic.
we'll be
Thank-
pursuing those funds.
Sorry. Fantastic. Thank you.
Commissioner Morgan.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for your leadership, Dan. It's been great. A lot of activity out there on the airfield, and Tori, just great working with you. But I just want to make a comment, something that kind of flies below the radar out there, no pun intended. We've been really trying to recruit smaller minority business because there is a lot of construction activity out there. And I just want to let everybody know, we are really trying to recruit smaller and minority businesses to participate in some of this construction because there's going to be a lot of it. And I just wanted to mention that because it kind of slides under the radar sometimes, Tori. So.
May I address that?
Yes.
Just quickly. So we just had a great conversation with Rick over at the Chamber yesterday and Omar about how we can partner with our own diversity that you folks know, our diversity development initiative that we're working on, but partnering with the Chamber also to help expand on that outreach. And just with Concourse A, we're pleased we've been pushing our prime, which is Chrisman, to push out smaller sections of the work so that we can get more involved. And in our last bid package, there were $60 million that went to 24 additional small firms for some of that work with our Concourse A project. So something our board has been pushing staff to do, and we work with our contractors to figure out smaller bite-sized pieces that can be done by smaller minority businesses. And so we're very pleased with the results so far, and we'll continue to do that.
And last thing, did you see Commissioner Bolkowski's eyes light up when you did that mobility thing? I mean,
Go try it out.
Okay.
Only for test purposes.
It's free to try out right after the checkpoint. Just come on out. Happy to show it to you.
All right, other questions? Yes, Commissioner Hennessy.
Thank you. I have one child who continues to live in very off-the-road locations, and I appreciate that I can get to where she's at in 2 flights. I wouldn't expect one, but, you know, it's very convenient to travel and to be able to get there with some efficiency. Within the last 24 hours, one of my news sources, Facebook, not necessarily a trusted news source, but I say that tongue-in-cheek, but it's been reporting that there are some last-minute cancellations on particularly one carrier, and I'm just curious as to, you know, is this going to continue? What might be contributing to this?
So, yeah, I think it's something that's
Again, it's an
challenging,
airline thing.
challenging us all. It does go back to the ability for the airlines to fly all of their routes that they have scheduled and sold tickets for. They're having crew resource issues, not enough pilots and not enough flight attendants, or not enough of them showing up for work. So they are unfortunately having a lot of operational cancellations. Unfortunately, we had one of the carriers cancel about 10 in the last few days here locally, but that's not just a local issue. Again, that's happening everywhere across the U.S., unfortunately, and it is a workforce shortage issue at this point. So to answer your question, will that continue to happen? Unfortunately, it may, until they get enough pilots and flight attendants back into the system to operate all of those flights.
I'd actually wondered if it wasn't a cost of fuel issue.
Actually, it's not. That's a
Okay.
large portion, of their bill overall, but those have not been the cancellations that they've seen. I mean, ultimately, that gets absorbed into the price of the ticket. These are operational challenges where they don't have the right crew in the right place to fly the airplane as it was published, and therefore have to cancel.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yep.
I'm
And
going to
I'd
have
add that,
one more question.
You have one more.
I have one
I'll
more.
quick add to that as well, Commissioner. Having an airline that gives you the best price doesn't always mean you're going to get the best service. So the airline that we're talking about, I mean, that's, a lot of people fly that airline because they get the best price, but I would challenge people to look about performance as well, because you always get the best for the best price.
Okay.
Anyway, and I have personally experienced that in the last few months as well. Pretty much get what you pay for when you shop an airline, so.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question. As we, is there any chance that we will get the federal station where you can apply like for global traveler type of, is the global one, I forget the.
Global entry, so we
Global
have,
entries.
we don't have enough of that international ridership that we were talking about before to warrant having a global entry service here. What we do have is the pre-check with the Transportation Security Administration, and we're actually looking at doing 3 additional open house enrollment centers on site at the airport in the next 12 months. Those have been basically shut down due to COVID because of the face-to-face interaction. But we're looking to get back into that to allow TSA pre-check and for folks to be in West Michigan to be able to get that service done at the airport when they're out there. But global entry, Clear, and some of the others, there's just not enough volume for those to make sense in our market at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Breedy.
Thank you, Chair Steck. One question I have kind of came to my mind when Commissioner Hennessy was talking and the pilot shortage came up and the staff shortage. Can you talk a little bit about the airport's relationship with the Aviation Academy that's on the property?
Absolutely. We have a great relationship with the Aviation Academy, which is a very neat facility in terms of what they can do there, but then with the programs and the students and the faculty, very great relationship with them. Just expanded. They were one of 4 tenants that built a new hangar in the last year, which is almost unheard of in the sort of the economy and the state of the economy the way it was. But they did provide another facility for hangaring their airplanes. It's also a place where that they'll be doing their, continuing to building an airplane, which is, as a student, is really cool to be able to do as a high school student. And then it also will house additional airplanes. So they have 2 and they want to go to 4 airplanes so that they can continue to provide flight training and hopefully allow those pilots to fill that pipeline that we see right now with the pilot shortage. And so the intent is there to, help create filling the pipeline so that we can, at the other end of that, get those students out and get them into jobs and flying the airplanes, which they're intended to do. But there's a lot more than just flying that happens at that high school. If you haven't been over there, I would suggest doing it. The things that they get to do as a high school student is incredible.
Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to touch upon the COVID testing. You guys were a great leader in having that out there. What is the status of that and the plan for that?
That's a great question, Commissioner. So fortunately or unfortunately, right, we had that facility out there. It was right in our exit plaza. Great place for it because at the time we didn't need it for parking. So it was repurposed and they were able to have a nice facility to do, basically drive up and do the testing, no insurance needed. That continues today. We're going to be relocating them up to the economy parking lot area because we are going to have to expand with the garage closures back into our parking operations later this month. But we're also working with them and they're partnering with Spectrum on a concept where they would come into the building and also offer additional things like oxygen bar and some additional kind of occupational medicine, drug testing and things like that for tenants at the airport. So we see their business possibly morphing into more of a service provider for the passenger as well as the employer out there and having a place inside the terminal to be able to do that. So if you wanted to come back and have healthy snacks or, place to get oxygen, things like that, you would have that, kind of spa-like feature for you.
And then as a follow-up, the last time you were here, we chatted about getting the approval for those folks to be testing approved centers for areas of flight that require testing, like Hawaii was an example. Is that still in process?
So they've received the approvals for most of the places, and fortunately, a lot of them are now relaxing and not requiring that. We do on occasion still have an issue with other countries in the way they want to see the COVID test and how that's tied to the passenger's record. But we're working through those cases on a case-by-case basis. So yeah, they've been very easy and good to work with to help resolve some of those issues. Unfortunately, as every country has its own requirements and every airline flying to that country has its own approved requirements, sometimes it is a little bit clunky. It's not the same across the board.
Well, it was an amazing response to that challenge, and I really commend you for having that set up and operating for when needed. And I myself personally used it for family members. I know a lot of neighbors and friends who used it. So well done with that.
All right. Commissioner Womack has requested a second opportunity. Anyone else? First time. Commissioner Antor.
Thank you. Good morning, guys. Just real quick, I know back in the day, we used to get most of our pilots through the military, people that flew with the military, and then they would kind of morph into the private sector. Is that still the case, or are we looking more broad now? Are we trying to attract more people from the private sector?
It is still the case that we get military pilots that, you know, come out and then start flying civilian, but the quantity of those pilots is less. And as we've looked at, you know, more unmanned aerial operations in the military, there have been less pilots that are coming out of the military to fill that pipeline. And that's really what the airlines are seeing, is the shortage of qualified personnel to come in and take those positions. You've actually now in the last couple of years seen a couple of airlines start their own flight training academy just so that they can fill their pipeline and get their pilots through, because there are not enough that are coming out of the military or other experienced locations to provide for that. So we see it today, but it's a smaller number than what it used to be. And so having to really do outreach and get new interested people, you know, wanting to fly and getting through the training requirements, there's still barriers of entry for that. So there's still a challenge on just the financial cost for that. It's not as accessible as what we think it needs to be, and so we're still, you know, continuing to work on that. But this is going to be a situation that'll take years to resolve. I mean, the pilot shortage in any forecast, you know, they're looking out 5 to 10 years for that still to be a situation.
All right. Anyone else for first time? I don't see any. So Commissioner Womack.
Yes, Mr. Richardson, about maybe 3-4 years ago when we were in the chambers and we were having some discussion about bonding for the airport, I had brought up about minority contractors and participation. We had an intensive discussion about it. And it seems like here we are today and we're kind of shockingly in the same situation. To alleviate those problems, is there any opportunity for there also to be some engagement and conversations with like Grand Rapids Urban League, Hispanic Chamber, and Hispanic Center, some of the organizations that represent minorities that are right there, boots on the ground in the community? And I think the Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce is a great start too. I think that's going to do very well about that. But is there room to engage other entities within those communities?
Yeah,
bring them to the table?
Yeah, there really is, and it's a good point. Meeting with the chamber, we talked a little bit about that yesterday, how this looks going forward. In addition, we'll have more bonding requirements coming forward. As we mentioned, we've got over $400 million worth of investments to make. So, you know, we're literally going through the check baggage inspection design process right now and the consolidated rental car facility design process right now, which we hope to be able to have cost estimates later this year, and we'll be seeking support and approval for more bonding for that, which again would allow for more of the minority small business participation to be involved in that work, or even on the financial side, if there are others that are in the, you know, not the construction side, but even in financing or underwriting and that kind of stuff, to be involved in. So we have a lot of opportunities for further future involvement, and we'll take advantage of that. And we do outreach for these. Like I said, I think the outreach that we did for Concourse A was very helpful to see. I think there was close to 40 or 50 small firms interested in bidding on that work, and as a result, that $60 million is going to 24 different ones that we weren't doing business with. And so spreading that out over many more, you know, service providers has been great. We'll continue to do that.
And how do you go about getting out the words when these new contracts are available to get bids to come in?
So we push that information out. We've done outreach events. We also have we maintain a bidders list or a procurement. So our office that oversees all the procurement will send information out for anybody that's expressed an interest to be on our list for opportunities. And we push that stuff out to everybody that's on the list. It might not be relevant to their type of work, but we push it out anyway so that they're aware of it, hoping that word of mouth and just more of us being out and visible will help garner more interest and more activity in bidding and procurement.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? If not, I guess they left the question to me on, does the PIN get us free parking when we? Just checking. Just checking, just checking. So, thank you so much for your presentation, Tori and Dan. We'll continue to watch with great interest the developments that are going on out there.
Great, thank you all for your time, appreciate
care.
it.
All right, next item of business is public comment. This is with respect to items on the agenda. If there is anyone here from the public that wishes to address the Board of Commissioners, you may do so if you will approach the podium and identify yourself, and you have up to 3 minutes. And I see none, so we will move on from public comment. There is another opportunity later in the meeting. We'll move to item number 7, the consent agenda, and I will call on Vice Chair Breedy.
Thank you, Chair Steck. I move the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from February 24 and March 1.
Is there support? Supported, yes, thank you, Commissioner Sparks. Discussion? All right, if not, will you please take the roll call on the consent agenda motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the motion to adopt the consent agenda, Commissioners Antor. Yes. Bolter. Yes. Vice Chair Breedy.
Yes.
Commissioners Bilkowski.
Yes.
Burrow.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Hennessy. Yes. Jones.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
LeGrand. Yes. McLeod.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Ponstein.
Yes.
Skaggs.
Yes.
Sparks.
Yes.
Teal.
Yes.
Womack.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Chair Steck.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 19 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. The consent agenda is adopted.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next item, which are resolutions 8A, and I will call on Commissioner Sparks.
Like to move Resolution 310-22-28 to amend the Michigan Energy Assistance Program for the budget for Kent County Community Action.
Is there support?
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Womack. Any discussion, questions, comments? I see none, so Madam Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 28, Commissioners Antor. Yes. Bolter. Yes. Vice Chair Breedy.
Yes.
Commissioners Bilkowski.
Yes.
Burrow.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Hennessy. Yes. Jones.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
LeGrand.
Yes.
McLeod.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Ponstein.
Yes.
Skaggs.
Yes.
Sparks.
Yes.
Teal.
Yes.
Womack.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Chair Steck.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 19 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. Resolution 28 is adopted.
Thank you. We'll move to item 8B, and I will call on Commissioner Bilkowski.
Thank you, Chair. I move Resolution 29er of today's date, a grant for medical marijuana operation and oversight from the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs.
There's support.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner McLeod. Comments, questions? I see none. Madam Clerk, will you take the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 29er, Commissioners Antor.
Yes.
Bolter. Yes. Vice Chair Breedy.
Yes.
Commissioners Bilkowski.
Yes.
Burrow.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Hennessy. Jones.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
LeGrand.
Yes.
McLeod.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Ponstein.
Yes.
Skaggs.
Yes.
Sparks.
Yes.
Teal.
Yes.
Womack.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Chair Steck.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 19 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. Resolution 29er is adopted.
Thank you. We'll move to item 8C, and I will call on Commissioner Green.
Thank you, Chair Steck. I move the adoption of resolution number 30 of today's date, which is the fiscal year 21 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant from the Sheriff's Office.
Support.
And supported by Commissioner Jones. Any further questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner LeGrand.
I just was curious a little bit about the new software that the sheriff's office was going to purchase, and just looking for some instances and how it was going to improve customer service, particularly, I think he said, for records.
Good morning, the Undersheriff. So this is going to be hopefully our last software technology project to assist our records division with scheduling. So it's almost going to sit on top of our 2 other software systems. The public will call in And without having the need to actually talk to an attendant, they'll be able to schedule, request whatever documents, schedule an online or schedule an appointment for fingerprints, request records, that sort of thing, without having that need to have the interaction. We don't have a software product actually selected. That'll be part of the RFP process. However, things that will be essential will be the ability for it to interact with our other two pieces of software to assist with the public. Multilingual options is going to be a part of the component. And then if need be, the ability to transfer over to a live attendant to be able to ask those questions that aren't already established within that FAQ portion of the software as well.
So this will it increase speed in getting their questions resolved?
The efficiency, yeah. So it'll be one, the need for the live interaction, which will then also allow for the staff to help with the public that are actually coming in person to not have to juggle both of those activities.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I see none, so Madam Clerk, you will take the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 30, Commissioners Antor. Yes. Bolter. Yes. Vice Chair Brevy.
Yes.
Commissioners Bulkowski.
Yes.
Burl.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Hennessy. Yes. Jones.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
LeGrand. Yes. McLeod.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Ponstein.
Yes.
Skaggs.
Yes.
Sparks. Yes. Teal.
Yes.
Womack.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Chair Steck.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 19 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. Resolution 30 is adopted.
Thank you. We'll move to item 8D, and I will call on Commissioner Sparks again.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move Resolution 310-2231, acceptance of the Federal Emergency Management System Homeless Isolation Sheltering Funds.
Yes. Support?
Support.
I think it was supported, I'm sorry, you lost on that one. All right. Supported by Commissioner Wooden. Comments or questions? Yes, Commissioner Wooden.
First a comment, thank you, Chair. First a comment and then a question. First, I'm just very glad to see that these funds are coming in. I know that this was a slog to get the FEMA reimbursement for this particular use, but really speaks, I think, to the quality of the response we provided during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic and our ability to keep homeless folk, particularly homeless families, in a safe sheltered environment. Given the fact that I believe a portion of CARES dollars were originally appropriated for this, will any of those funds be coming back to the county's general fund? And what is the plan to reappropriate those dollars?
Jeff, that's probably for you.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Good question. So, yeah, we will, the CARES funds, as you know, or maybe you don't remember, had to be closed out by the end of last year, 2021. So we had fronted these expenses with CARES funds. So, yeah, we moved those all back, and in the process, we'll reallocate those funds to the general fund so we can close all that out. Yes.
Fantastic. And do we have an intended purpose for how they will be used in the general fund yet, or is that
probably the next agenda item?
Okay, that makes some sense. And again, just I know that this was a considerable effort on your part and on your department's part. So thank you, Jeff.
All right, any other questions or comments? I see none, so Madam Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 31, Commissioners Antor. Yes. Bolter. Yes. Vice Chair Brevy.
Yes.
Commissioners Bulkowski.
Yes.
Burl.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Hennessy. Yes. Jones.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
LeGrand. Yes. McLeod.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Ponstein.
Yes.
Skaggs.
Yes.
Sparks.
Yes.
Teal.
Yes.
Womack.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Chair Steck.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 19 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. Resolution 31 is adopted.
Thank you. We'll move to item 8E, and I will call on Commissioner Bolter.
Thank you, Chair Steck. I would like to move Resolution 32 of today's date.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Morgan.
Yes.
Thank you. Discussion, comments, questions on this motion? Yes, Commissioner Hennessy.
I'm just wondering if we could get a little bit more explanation on the budget lapse and putting it in strategic capital and where we go from there.
Okay, the process of doing that?
The whole process.
To either you, Al, or Jeff? I could ramble on, but it's probably more effective to have you answer that question.
Morning again. So by process, do you mean, so we're anticipating a rather large lapse in the general fund, and that's due to various things. Property taxes came in actually higher than we budgeted. We budgeted conservatively due to COVID. We had some additional revenue sharing was still strong. We weren't sure, so we budgeted conservatively, and then some of the CARES Act reallocation. So this will allow us to have the surplus, and we typically make a motion this time of year to transfer out the surplus to strategic capital. Gives us more flexibility in the future to use those funds without having to do any deficit spending if we want to reallocate some money in future years. Did that answer your question?
All right. Any other, yes, Commissioner Antor.
Thank you, Chair. I know after this meeting, we're going to have another meeting looking at Cannonsburg and possible acquisition out there. I'd really like to see us take additional funds that we may be putting towards something like that, and knocking off as much of this debt as possible, as soon as possible. And I think that would be the best we could do for the taxpayers right now. So I just wanted to make that statement and that consideration moving forward to increase this debt consolidation, elimination as soon as possible. So that would be my
Jeff, am I correct that the strategic capital is the account that we use to help fund the recent 3 projects that we have proceeded with?
Correct. Yep.
So we were able to use these funds to do those projects without any borrowing to do that. So
So you could look at it that we're replenishing that fund for the monies that we're taking out to do the other projects.
and then these funds will be available for us to make a determination as how we want to allocate it for capital projects. Understood. Other comments, questions? If not, Madam Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 32, Commissioners Antor. Yes. Bolter.
Yes.
Vice Chair Brevy.
Yes.
Commissioners Lukowski.
Yes.
Burl.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Hennessy.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
LeGrand.
Yes.
McLeod.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Ponstein.
Yes.
Skaggs.
Yes.
Sparks.
Yes.
Teal.
Yes.
Womack.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Chair Steck.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 19 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. Resolution 32 is adopted.
Thank you. We'll move to item 8F, and I will call on Commissioner Teal.
Thank you, Chair Steck. I move item number 33 of today's date, the approval of the 2022 federal and state legislative priorities.
Second.
It is supported by Commissioner Skaggs. Any further questions or comments with respect to this motion? Yes, Commissioner, Vice Chair Brevy.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank the staff and administration and the commissioners who worked through these priorities with us. I think we have a good set of both federal and state priorities here, and I look forward to working through them and checking them off as we go this year with our legislators. And I think to you too, as you have conversations with your local legislators, or federal legislators, talk about this and, continue to help share the interests of Kent County and what we're trying to do to make Kent County a great place to live, work, and play.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, I will first join in thanking the Legislative and Human Resources Committee, as well as Chair or Vice Chair Brevy for their work on this and getting this process through. This can sometimes be a cumbersome conversation, but I appreciate your work on that. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 33, Commissioners Antor.
Yes.
Bolter.
Yes.
Vice Chair Brevy.
Yes.
Commissioners Lukowski.
Yes.
Burl.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Hennessy.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
LeGrand.
Yes.
McLeod.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Ponstein.
Yes.
Skaggs.
Yes.
Sparks. Teal.
Yes.
Womack.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Chair Steck.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 19 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. Resolution 33 is adopted.
Thank you. We'll move to item 8G, and I will call on Commissioner Teal again.
Thank you, Chair Steck. I move resolution number 34 of today's date, the addition of 1 probate court judge and 2 judicial clerks.
Support.
Supported by Vice Chair Brevy. Questions or comments? Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Stack. So I'm not going to not vote for this because it's something that serves the public. But, you know, once again, this is the classic example of an unfunded mandate that was pushed down upon the counties when the state decided they weren't responsible for running the courts anymore. I mean, it's easy for the state to say, well, we're paying the salary of the judge. What they don't pay is the benefits or the two clerks that have got to be added or the courtroom and everything else that goes into effect of that. I mean, plain and simple, it's an unfunded mandate. And I made a comment, I think at the legislative meeting, is that, you know, I think counties would be more than happy to give up revenue sharing if the state would just pay and take back the court system. So I'll be a yes vote, but, you know, I want people to know this is an unfunded mandate put on counties from the state of Michigan. And instead of the state of Michigan fighting over what to do with this surplus, why don't they try to take time and find ways to make counties whole for all the responsibilities we do on behalf of them.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, Commissioner Morgan.
Well, you know, I agree with Commissioner Ponstein, and we tried to convince the state to take that over years ago, and we even offered up revenue sharing, but alas, it didn't work out. So, thank you.
New leadership at MAC, maybe we'll see different results. Pressure's on. Anybody else? Yes, Commissioner Skaggs?
I guess it should be noted that in the state priorities that we just passed, stable court funding from the state was in there. So
we're on it.
Have it.
Other questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Hennessy.
I am supportive of this, but perhaps we could, you know, hear from Commissioner Thiel, who led this process in terms of, you know, what was involved in the process itself and who was involved in it.
Commissioner Teal, are you willing to respond to that? She chaired our subcommittee that did the analysis.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I was happy to chair the Judicial Resources Subcommittee. I had Commissioner Breivy and Commissioner LeGrand on there as well. We brought in all of the stakeholders, the court system, the sheriff's department, the prosecutor, and additionally, we brought in our human resources, facilities, am I forgetting? Fiscal clerk. We did quite an extensive search on all of this to make sure we heard from everybody. It was overwhelmingly supported, and the data and the numbers behind the need for this additional judge was overwhelming, as you can see in the report that we put out. Does that answer everything? Okay.
Thank you for responding. Anyone else? All right. Yes, Commissioner LeGrand.
Just as a follow-up to Commissioner Teal's comment, while we were only voting on the probate judge today, we did really discuss the need for an additional district judge. So that we weren't in the timeline to get the legislation to work, to get that through the state, so we don't have the enabling legislation for that second judge. But it's fair to say that we acknowledge the need, particularly in that that district, which is just having huge population growth, and our two judges are just barely keeping up as it is. So we do acknowledge that need, and you should expect to see something, you know, in the near future on an additional district court judge.
Thank you for that. And I should probably clarify for the commission that we did receive the report. I accepted it as being compliant with the charge. And while there were a number of recommendations, this is the recommendation that we're specifically bringing to the board at this time, and there are more coming. All right. No other questions or comments? We'll move. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go ahead and have a roll call, if you would, Madam Clerk.
Let's make this official, shall we?
Sure.
On the motion to adopt Resolution 34, Commissioners Antor. Yes. Bolter. Yes. Vice Chair Breivy.
Yes.
Commissioners Bulkowski.
Yes.
Burl.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Hennessy. Yes. Jones.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
LeGrand. Yes. McLeod.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Ponstein.
Yes.
Skaggs.
Yes.
Sparks. Yes. Teal.
Yes.
Womack.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Chair Steck.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 19 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. Resolution 34 is adopted.
Thank you. We will now move to item 8H, and I will call on Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move Resolution 35. It's from the Treasurer's Office, and it's for delinquent 2021 real estate taxes and authorize issuance of the general obligation limited tax notes for 2022.
Support.
And supported by Commissioner Jones. Questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. I know in the document it says the limit is, selling 98% of face value, but I'm wondering what the actual market conditions are, like what we would expect the percentage of face value sale of these bonds.
Good morning. I will ask our treasurer to respond to that.
Good morning. We don't know the exact number, but it is going to be up from last year. Last year, I think our interest rate was 0.23%. It's going to be probably just above 1.5%. At least that's what our financial advisors are stating.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, Madam Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 35, Commissioners Antor. Yes. Bolter. Yes. Vice Chair Breve.
Yes.
Commissioners Bilkowski.
Yes.
Burl.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Hennessy. Jones.
Yes.
Coleman. LeGrand. McLeod.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Ponstein.
Yes.
Skaggs. Sparks. Teal.
Yes.
Womack.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Chair Steck.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 19 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. Resolution 35 is adopted.
Thank you. That concludes our resolutions for today, and we'll move to our next item, which is the second opportunity for public comment. If there was anyone from the public that wishes to address the Board of Commissioners on a matter within our general jurisdiction, you may do so now. Please identify yourself at the podium, and you have up to 3 minutes. When we have a lot of business, this is what happens, isn't it? I see none, so we'll move on to the next item, which is the administrator's report.
Sure, I just have a few items for you today. This has been an interesting year in that we have some of those processes that don't happen every year occurring. So one was the Judicial Resources Subcommittee, another one is the Officers' Compensation Commission, and that group finished their work last week, and that will be on the 24th, March 24th agenda for the board. Also, we are very close on, we should in fact, maybe today or tomorrow, have the signed contract with Guidehouse. We've been working on some broad parameters to start with Guidehouse that would come to you for review and approval as well. And so we've been getting more.
Guidehouse is our ARPA.
ARPA consultant, yes. So we're poised to move forward with the whole ARPA process at this time. So we're looking forward to putting some more definition on some of the areas of priority. Again, this is money that we look to have make transformational investments. So for the most part, for the money, that will mean that the dollars continue to reverberate into the future and create more value in the future beyond the initial allocation. We'll also be looking to enter into partnerships, tri-sector, other local governments, to try to expand the funds and the benefit from the funds. In relation to that, we also had the ARPA or the broadband RFP go out, and so a couple of weeks we'll have respondents there, and we'll be ready to kick that process of really doing a thorough look throughout the county, kind of ranking need of broadband, not only in maybe a rural area that has none, but maybe in a urban area that has substandard service. And so really kind of getting a grip on where the initial investments would be best, and I think that will also include maybe a couple pilot projects, so we can pilot maybe some of the partnerships we'd like to put together with local government, state government, providers, federal money. So looking to get that going soon. That's kind of exciting. Also wanted to mention that
I just want to put a little more color to some of Commissioner Ponstein's comments. A study was done, I think it was 13 years ago, that indicated that unfunded mandates were $2.2 billion of county government expense in the state. And so in other words, 12, 13 years ago, the state wasn't covering $2.2 billion of what it was requiring county government to perform alone. And so, I mean, this is something that I think we'll be hearing more and more of. It's something that hasn't gone away. We'll keep working at it because it's good government, we believe, to persuade the state to address this in the future. Then the last thing would be, we're looking forward to strategic planning tomorrow. I'll be dressed casually, so I'd encourage you, this isn't necessarily an event where you wear a suit and tie, but it's up to you. But, so we'll look forward to that. And that's all I have for today.
Shorts and swimsuit, though, would not be appropriate.
Can I wear my bib overall?
No.
Yeah, probably not tank tops either, so, yeah.
I was thinking of showing up in a tux.
You're welcome. All right, thank you for your report. Next item is reports, and I will start by just indicating, I think I said it last time, that we would have a form for a written report for submission as well. We're still working on that. We had a lot of balls in the air this last couple of weeks, so we're working on it, and we'll get that out probably by the next meeting. With that, reports. Yes, Commissioner Hennessy.
I'll report on the Area Agency for Aging of Western Michigan, which is a mouthful, but that covers 9 counties in the city of Grand Rapids, and that in itself is quite a territory. Our executive director, Jackie O'Connor, is officially retiring as of October 1st, and we have officially started a search process. And building on my experience here in Grand Rapids, in Kent County, I'm going to be on that search committee as well. So we have started the process, and we'll be looking for a very quality, capable leader to follow Jackie O'Connor. And I will note that this date will see her and her work and her leadership through the senior millage, the continuation of the millage rate in that election in August. So we have good continuance of leadership in that department.
Good, thank you. Any other report, Commissioner or Vice Chair Breeby?
Thank you, Chair. I have a report from the Board of Public Works. We met last week Thursday, and some exciting stuff is happening there, as usual. So we approved the development agreement with Continuous and Energia, and so that means that the Sustainable Business Park is taking another step and moving forward. And with that, we've also created a stakeholder group to continue, approximately a year of discussions and understanding, learning more about the project. And our administrator here is going to be leading that, and Commissioner Bukowski and I will be on it along with other members of the community. We have representation from the chamber, from the Metro 6, and other townships as well. So it'll be a good group, and I look forward to, answering their questions, addressing their concerns, and getting them on board with our project as we move forward. Another agreement was also executed, and that's with the Department of Public Works and Vicinity. And Vicinity will provide it's going to be a transition agreement that we approved, and they're going to be working with Waste to Energy and running that facility, so it's very important there. And also, the department has worked with Energia and also meeting with DTE regarding renewable gas and interconnecting that with the Sustainable Business Park from the anaerobic digester that will be there in the future. So any questions, let me know. I'm happy to answer them.
Commissioner Morgan, thank you.
Just a short note from the dispatch authority. We've moved from a building operation of towers and stuff to an operational one. And we've gone from monthly meetings down to quarterly. So we are making progress, and I just wanted to let everybody know that this 800 system is just fabulous as far as communications and the ability for multi-agencies to be able to communicate. So it's been a long process. I think we're in the operational mode. The sheriff's been very, very just instrumental in guiding us in this. Anything you want to add, Madam Sheriff? Nope, just thumbs up. Okay, thanks.
Yes, great. Thank you for that report. It's been a long time. Commissioner Sparks.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to share that it's not that sexy, but it did happen. The Agricultural Preservation Board, we came up with a sign, and it's beautiful. So you will see, as you travel throughout Kent County, beautiful signage, kind of like how you do in Heritage Hill, in front of some of the farms that we have. So I thought that was pretty neat. And Governor Whitmer has declared March as Agricultural Awareness Month. So we're excited about that, knowing that we generate about 850,000 jobs and more than $104 billion to our state economy because of that. So that was pretty cool to me. Also, we want to share information from the AAA Governing Committee. There is a Family Caregiver University that is coming up for anxiety in older adults, and it talks about the fear of re-entering society. So this the great series. It's a free program. That's Tuesday, March 22nd at 11 o'clock, and that will be on Zoom. Thank you. Oh, one more thing.
Yes.
I'd like to congratulate our former chair, Mandy Bolter, for being one of the most 50 influential women in West Michigan. And I also like to say thank you very much for your leadership. And I also like to congratulate my sister as well. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Any other reports? Yes, Commissioner Wooden.
So I would defer to our chair. I'd be happy to provide an update on CHAC, unless she would prefer. Fantastic. So the Community Health Advisory Committee met a few weeks ago, provided an update on a number of items, some including general updates on our lead services, the proposed animal control transition. I think the most pertinent and open-ended discussions were on our lab services. As of right now, our lab services at the Health Department were suspended because of staff shortage, and it is leading to a larger discussion whether or not many other counties no longer have their own in-house laboratories. They've contracted that out, and that is something that they may ask us to consider the pros and cons of that, whether or not being one of the few counties to keep a public lab is valuable, or whether or not the larger laboratory industry would cover those gaps. And in addition, there was a discussion, the Children's Special Healthcare Fund is a state fund that provides money to local health departments for children with special needs. And currently, the service is poorly understaffed. I could be wrong on this, but I believe I recall there's something close to 7,000 cases in Kent County alone, and 3 nurses at the health department to service them. There's currently been a request for a $2.5 million appropriation at the legislature to increase the staffing to be appropriate to the case needs, or more appropriate to the case needs. And so certainly would encourage all of us to support such an initiative in our own way. And then the last thing I would just note is, given that the CHAC met after an executive committee of our board at 7:30, a full board meeting at 8:30, a board work session after that, Commissioner Teal had to put up with me for 7 hours, which I think deserves some kind of an award. So I certainly appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other reports? No other reports, we'll move to miscellaneous. That got him going. All right, Commissioner Hennessy.
Commissioner Sparks was way too modest. She is among the 50 women who will be honored today. So I'm very pleased to say that. Also, I have to remark, I just opened up my favorite news source, Facebook, and see that it is the birthday for her and her twin sister, Jessica.
Happy birthday.
So I have to know. And then the Women's Resource Center will be honoring Kent County today, an HR collaborative for its work to advance and empower women in the workforce. And and our DEI initiatives as well. So so there's a lot going on today, and Kent County is standing front and center as it should be.
All right. Good. Who else over here? Commissioner Skaggs, did you have your hand up?
Commissioner Hennessy stole my thunder on wishing Commissioner Sparks a happy birthday.
All right. Commissioner Morgan.
Yeah, real quick, the St. Patrick's Day Parade is back for downtown Grand Rapids. We're coming out of the pandemic. I don't know how big a parade it's going to be. Last night at the meeting, we had like 10 folks that registered, but it's on. It's at 11 o'clock Saturday, and come out and have your Irish Ice smiling on Saturday. So.
Aye. All right. Thank you. Andy? Sorry, Commissioner Bolter.
Thank you, Chair Steck. Two quick things. I, of course, want to also commend Commissioner Sparks on her award today as well. So 50 most influential women, there can be no doubt she is in that category. Also, I apparently can predict the future because 2 weeks ago I said that the Lowell wrestling team would win the state championship, and they did, 9th straight year in a row. That is a record. The team GPA is an average of 3.82, which is amazing. And 14 wrestlers, again, qualified for individuals as well as the female. 3 of them made the state championship in individual, and our female wrestler placed. So I think there can be no doubt there's some pretty awesome parents and kids in Lowell. So, thanks.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Bulkowski.
Thank you. 3 quick things from ridiculous to the sublime. The Laugh Fest, speaking of things returning, shameless plug, next week, Laugh Fest returns, shorter run than in the past. My wife works at Gilda's, so I have to note that conflict. Second, I hope we're planning to do something for our staff as we get ready to mark the 2nd anniversary of the shutdown. I mean, our staff from the health department, the sheriff's department, and at the jail, and I mean, top to bottom, you know, to make it through this last 2 years, because it's the 2-year anniversary. The last public thing I did was a Laugh Fest event on March 11th of 2020. So just, again, massive hats off to our staff, and I wish I could give you all a month off, but I'm in the minority, so I can't. And then, blame the Republican. No, just joking. Just joking, just joking.
No, he's not, folks. No, he's not.
So, well, unfortunately, I'm going to end with a bipartisan critique, because this week we're going to start getting our $400 checks from Auto No Fault. And folks, it was a travesty what we did 3 years ago. Everyone said every time big legislation happens, we know it's not perfect and we'll make the fixes. It is not fixed. We had people here testifying in public comment about how direct care workers aren't getting paid, home care agencies are going out of business, and people have died. That is not an exaggeration. It's a few, but people have died. And 3 years ago, we were told the catastrophic fund was going to go bankrupt. It's against the law in the state of Michigan for the catastrophic fund to be audited publicly. It is against the law for that fund to be audited publicly. It's still being litigated at the Supreme Court. And we're going to get $400 back because they had $3 billion extra. Whew, how'd that happen? So this was a bipartisan fiasco that needs a bipartisan fix. So please continue to talk to our state legislators and anybody you know in the administration. It must be fixed. I know my $400 is going to go to a disability rights organization to help continue this fight. So thank you all.
Wow. All right. Start instituting the 5-minute rule again. Yes. Commissioner Green.
Thank you, Chair Steck. I get the opportunity today to brag on some talented student athletes in my district. And we're going to praise the sports that don't get recognized as often as they should, because the Northview Wildcat boys bowling team is Division II state champions. Very proud of those young men. And I'd like to offer my condolences to Commissioners Teal and Bolter because my Northview Wildcats and Rockford Rams beat Forest Hills Northern and Forest Hills Central respectively last night in the district semifinals, and both of those teams for boys basketball. And we talk about a house divided. It's a commissioner divided because two high schools in my district are playing for the boys basketball district title tomorrow night, Rockford and Northview. So congratulations to both of them on great seasons. And hopefully I can report that one of them is a state champion here in a few weeks. So thank you.
All right, Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Steck. So my comments are more on process on how this commission works. And I think everyone saw on the news that according to the way it's worded, the commissioners have voted to not levy the restaurant fees for this upcoming year. And when I first saw that, I was kind of taken back on, when did that happen? And I know at the end of last year, I had family issues and recovering from COVID. Someone had said that it might have been in the budget. I kind of looked on that, and that was one of the meetings that I had to miss. It wasn't until the late night text from Chair Steck that I kind of found when this happened. And I guess I want some clarity because you go to resolution 01-27-2213, which was moved by former Chair Bolter. It basically says, whereas the CSL FRF dollars must be obligated by December 31st, 2024, and expended by December 31st, 2026. A proposed spending strategy for the remaining funds will be developed to support the Finance Committee and the Board of Commissioners in making decisions. So when this came through with the funding of, just not for the restaurant fees, but for other things, I kind of looked on the previous finance agendas and I saw nowhere was the Finance Committee ever looked into these on how this money was going to be spent. Certainly the legislative wasn't, because I hear time and time again that the Finance Committee does all the heavy lifting, and for some reason I thought equal weight on spending this much money, which still stands in excess of 120 million, would be a heavy lift for the whole board. But the question I have is on our messaging. I mean, when this hit Facebook, hit the news media outlets, it kind of, made me think, I said, wow, I don't even know what I'm voting on. But this is what I voted on. It was a series, I think, of 10 or 12 things. And when it came to mentioning the food service licensing fee, it could be up to 1.3 million. And over the past 6 months, I've spoken several times on the need to renew that another year. Some of the responses I got was, well, it's not really on our priority list. We don't know if the health department can absorb that hit. But this is how it was worded on what we voted on. The art funds would support food service establishments that continue to experience hardship associated with COVID-19. So it doesn't say that we are going to do something for all of them. It states that we'll continue to help those that still experience hardship. It goes on further to reference then 2021 that the annual license fee charged to food service establishments were waived. The most effective approach in 2022 to support food service establishments that complies with the Treasury guidelines will be determined. So once again, we didn't vote on not granting those fees. We were still looking into it. And so the next step, which was highlighted, is develop and implement a process to distribute assistance to food service establishments. Once again, no mention about the fees. And it's not that I'm not against them. That was the right thing. My question is on the process on how we got to approving a general allocation for the food service industry, and how and who and when were those amounts decided on that this is a go then? Because technically, I don't think the commission voted on that. And I think whether we've got to be better off in our wording or our process, I mean, we got 19 commissioners here. And when I saw that on the news, I was just completely taken back because I had no idea what the process and who was the one that said that money that was allocated, which in the description was a broad way of spending that money, was targeted on one specific thing. So I don't expect a response today, but hopefully I can get a response on just what our process is, because time and time again, I just go, well, how did that happen, or how did that come up? Who had the input in that process, and why didn't all 19, if we were deciding on how to spend the money, I mean, there's still a lot of money left, and I think all 19 of us have probably got 2 or 3 areas that we think it should be spent, and I just need to know who's going to be making the decisions, how the rest of that pile of money is going to be spent. Thank you.
Just quickly, I'll respond by saying that was kind of a compound question, but the administrator and I will meet with you and walk that through as to how that happened. Yes, Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to congratulate Sarah Bialek, who is the City of Walker City Clerk, who is retiring after 15 years of service to our community, and definitely wish her well on any next adventure she has. But that, as we all know, is a lot of time in public service, and that is never an easy role, especially with election laws changing on a regular basis. We're so grateful for all of our clerks and grateful to have gotten to know her so well through our time here on the commission. Also wanted to emphasize the importance of all of us staying, if you can, for the Cannonsburg Ski Grant discussion. It's a work session, Al. We're not making any decisions, but it's an opportunity to ask questions, and this does have a rather quick time frame due to the grant deadline requirements, so it would be very nice if you can find it in your schedule to stay and learn more about that component after this meeting. Thanks.
Thank you. And Commissioner McLeod, my apologies, I lost the order there.
It's okay. Thank you, Chair. So we've had a lot of discussion about high school basketball and various sports. And so I have to also say congratulations to the OK White Conference, where Grand Rapids Christian and South Christian are going to play tomorrow night for the district championships. And so my son is an all-conference player and for Grand Rapids Christian, and I'm rooting for them. But for those that are rooting for South Christian, which I know someone on the board who is, I will say that it will be a great battle. So thanks, Chair.
Well, I will align with you because that's my alma mater, so, all right. Commissioner Antor, did you have your?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just, Dave Bukowski, sorry, I got to kind of counterpoint your deal with the PIP and the insurance. Just a reminder that we were one of just a few states that required the PIP funding and insurance. And I think 39 states don't require it, and they've been getting along just fine. And I would just compare this with the fact that we were one of a handful of states that allowed COVID patients, actually insisted on COVID patients going into nursing homes, which was the most ridiculous decision in the history of our state healthcare. And I just wanted to make that point, and the vast majority of states do not require PIP insurance, and I think, once again, we've been wrong on that. So I'm glad to see that we're no longer under those tenets. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other miscellaneous? Yes, I'm sorry, Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add to the Commissioner Wooden on children's special health care, Commissioner Polkowski on the issues around those, previously under, funding that's now differently, funded. I do think of, all the debates we have on the when it's appropriate for us collectively through government to fund various things, certainly, we all look at those with severe, disabilities or needs of no fault of their own, as kind of a special case. And I do think we need a bipartisan effort to establish a guide to help me interpret when Commissioner Bulkowski's comments are ridiculous and when they're sublime.
We'll put that on the agenda, Commissioner. Subcommittee. All right, any other miscellaneous? If not, just again, a reminder that right after this meeting, we'll be convening for a meeting to address the Cannonsburg project. So, and I think, is it going to be here?
Right here, yeah. And it's, an information session, basically.
closed session.
Right, not a formal meeting.
Yep.
Right.
So it'll be an informational session, so encourage you to join us for that. And with that, I will call on Commissioner Breedy.
Thank you, Chair. I move to adjourn, subject to the call of the chair, to Thursday, March 24, 2022 at 8:30 for an official meeting.
Supported, all in favor say yes. Yes. We are adjourned.